Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Diary. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for hanging out today. Nothing live today, just kind of fighting it a little bit. So, just going to go with the regular old recorded style for everyone. For some of you, that doesn't change a thing. So, thank you for hanging out today. As always, we are presented by Sea of Dead. Head over to seaofdead403.ca for that great Calgary swag. Also, head over to swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PK Primetime for 25% off. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about in the sports world today, but I just want to get a few things out there, and we'll go more in depth when we go live tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. But I can't leave everyone hanging with fantasy football season now into the stretch run as we get ready for another week on the waiver wire. So we'll do that and a couple other quick hitter things here today. But let's begin with helping you out in fantasy football. It is another waiver wire and a very important one, as for some, the trade deadline is done. So this is your only chance to add some key pieces for a potential title run. So let's help you out and get ready for another big week in the world of fantasy football. The fantasy football waiver wire, always important, and especially now that some places won't let you trade anymore. So we need to get some of those big fantasy football options out there for the people. So that's what we're going to do here with the waiver wire. Let's begin at quarterback. And there's actually a couple of good quarterback options here this week. Of course, for those of you who are new, we only use those who are owned in 35% of leagues or fewer. So check your options. Maybe there are some better ones out there, and we'll help you with that with the waiver wire rebound coming out on Wednesday. But we'll start with Jacoby Brissett, 35% owned for Arizona, coming off of setting the completions record. Sorry, completions percentage record was in the Canadian Football League and Grey Cup. But the completions record last week, another pretty good matchup against Jacksonville. Obviously not one that Justin Herbert and the Chargers were able to exploit last week, but still a relatively decent matchup for him. And so I think he's not going to blow you away or anything like that, but just a pretty steady, solid option for those who are having injury problems or bye week issues. I think he's a pretty good one. I think there's a little bit more of an upgrade with Bryce Young, 14% owned, coming off of a good performance against Atlanta, now going up against a beat-up San Francisco 49ers defense. Bryce Young is proving that he can be trusted. I know the game against New Orleans goes against that, but Bryce Young is showing that this is a guy that can be trusted to help you out in fantasy football, and I think he has another pretty good matchup here this week. And then the if you're desperate category goes to Tyrod Taylor, the new quarterback with the New York Jets, 1% owned. He gets a shot against the Baltimore defense that's been giving up some pretty decent fantasy football numbers. So this isn't going to blow you away. I wouldn't pick up Taylor expecting to win your week. Although maybe, like if you are just absolutely desperate and need a home run swing, maybe, because that Ravens team has given up some pretty good numbers to quarterbacks. But for Taylor, I think there is, this is again, just keep it between the white lines for us, man. But I think there's a little bit of value. I know the options out there aren't great and everything like that, but I think there's a touch of value, 1% owned. I think he's going to do okay this week against the Baltimore Ravens. So those are the quarterback options that we have for you this week. At running back, at wide receiver, we have a couple as well. I would say the biggest one for this week is Jaden Higgins, 17% owned for the Texans. We gave him out a couple of times last week, at least 7 targets now in 3 of his last 4. He has touchdowns in 2 of those games. Feels like a decent option. He didn't give you the biggest game against the Tennessee Titans, but he has still had a bit of favor with Davis Mills and that Houston Texans offense. So Buffalo, not a terrible matchup. Quick turnaround. I think Higgins has a decent day. Hollywood Brown continues to be just, again, steady if you need it. 23% owned. It's a couple of pretty good matchups in a row now for Kansas City, and the football team needs it. But he has at least 4 targets in every game this year, but 1. Again, not going to steal you a week, but if you just need 4, 5, 6 points, keep it between the white lines. Hollywood Brown is going to be our steady force at wide receiver. And also, the exact opposite of it. This is our home run swing, and it's with Xavier Legette. 8% rostered. It's obviously chasing the points from a big week last week. But as we talked about with Bryce Young, it's not a bad matchup against the 49ers beat up defense if you need a big chance. If we're projected to be down by a bunch, or if we have a really bad Thursday night, I think there's an opportunity to have Xavier Legette come in and maybe try to save us a week and pick up a big dub for us there. And so there, we have what I think is a pretty steady option. We have the safe option, and we have the home run swing at wide receiver. At running back, got ahead of ourselves there. This is the number one pickup of the week and maybe of the season. And I think that there is a real potential here to try to, I don't want to go 100% on my fab. I think Emanuel Wilson is good. He's the Green Bay Packers running back. Josh Jacobs is hurt. It doesn't sound like it's a season ender, but if we are right on the cusp of the playoffs, I'm throwing a lot of my fab out there. I'm using some high waiver priorities on Emanuel Wilson. He's going to be the clear-cut, I think, number one running back with Green Bay, with Jacobs down pretty solid as a runner. A bit of a different style, but has shown to be a pretty good change of pace kind of guy. They don't have the best schedule for running backs going forward, but opportunities like this don't come around all that often at running back. The next few here aren't quite as sexy as that one, but Kenneth Gainwell, 34% owned, 2 touchdowns, 17 opportunities last week. We can't guarantee that going forward, but we can guarantee that he has some good matchups ahead, and he's at least going to be factored into the offense out in Pittsburgh. Sean Tucker, 28% owned. Obviously, the massive weekend last week. They do have a difficult matchup and feel pretty good that 21 opportunities, probably going to be the peak for this running back, but he's pretty good. I like him more than I like Rachaad White. So I think there's an opportunity for Taylor, even when Bucky Irving comes back. I think there's an opportunity for Taylor to still be a factor in the Tampa Bay run game. And same with Devin Singletary, 21% owned, double-digit opportunities in each of the last 3 weeks. Again, some difficult matchups ahead for the Giants at running back, but tough to overlook that kind of volume behind Tyrone Tracy and this New York Giants offense. And then Bam Knight, 18% rostered. The backfield jumbled up in Arizona, but DeMarcado goes down with an injury. Knight has 9 or more opportunities in 5 of the 6 games that he has played this season, and he's getting the rock in close now. I think there is a lot of potential in Bam Knight to come up with another couple of good weeks here for Arizona. And then we include them every week. I'm not going to go too far into them anymore, but our handcuffs with Blake Corum and Tank Bigsby with the Eagles and the Rams. Bigsby, 21% owned. Corum with the Rams, 17% owned. These are guys. Corum is a bit more than just a handcuff. He has a role in the LA offense, but if either of their guys go down, then it is just mucho fantasy points for them. And now that we are past the point of trades in a lot of leagues, I think these are a couple of guys that you're going to want to really lock in, especially if you're the owner of those 2 teams. But not a bad option either way. At tight end, it's A.J. Barner, who is rostered in 9% of leagues with the Seattle Seahawks. It's not the first time we've chased a big week with Barner, but he has some good matchups, and this is one of the better offenses in the National Football League. So I think Barner, a little boomer bust, but you can say that about most tight ends. Pretty good fill-in if we're missing a Sam Laporta and our last option didn't go well. And then our streaming defense of the week is a bit of a surprise, because it's the Indianapolis Colts who are playing the Kansas City Chiefs. I never thought I would get to the point where I would be suggesting a team that's facing KC, but we're here. Kansas City's offense does not look like one that scares you from a fantasy standpoint, so I like the Colts to go up against this Kansas City defense here this week. Anyone else that I missed that you guys are thinking of, or any questions, who to drop or anything like that, throw them into the comments on this video. I get to everything that you guys ask, so we will get to them there. Any disagreements with anything I said, throw it in there as well. Love having the debates with everyone in the comments. And if you have any fantasy football questions, you can get them in tomorrow on Wednesday, November 19th. At 10 a.m. Mountain Time when we go live. We're going to go live Wednesday at 10 a.m. and we're going to go live Thursday, November 20th at 10 a.m. on the channels that you see on the overlay here. Going to go live with those. So make sure you check us out and get your fantasy football questions in then. And share this with your friends. I know we like to keep our hidden gems of fantasy football a secret, but hit that share button. It really helps grow this show. And while we want to keep things a secret, I would like to grow this show, and that would allow me to do a whole lot more fun stuff in the fantasy football world, but I do need your help for that, so make sure you hit that share button to send this out to, if you have some fantasy football friends who aren't in a league with you, to send it to them. That would help me out a great deal. Fantasy football can be very cruel sometimes. So each week on Couch Potato Diary, we go through the best performances from the least owned players to show that there are some darlings in the fantasy football dumpsters.
Hey, what you need, yeah? Man, I got it, wow.
It is time for the fantasy football dumpster darlings of the week. So let's go into it. We will start at the quarterback spot, where Bryce Young is 13% owned with Carolina, 31.82 fantasy points. A huge start for our dumpster darlings. Up next at wide receiver is Tyrell Shavers. He is with Buffalo. You probably could have convinced me that he was on either Montreal or Saskatchewan in the CFL's Grey Cup last weekend. He's 0% owned, so as much as some of those players in the Grey Cup are in fantasy, 17 fantasy points with Buffalo. Our other wide receiver is Xavier Legette, 7% owned. My guy put up 16.3 fantasy points. At running back, everyone knows Buffalo can really run the football. Not many people know that it's Ty Johnson who can do it. 2% owned, 14 fantasy points. Up next, Green Bay getting injury at running back. So in comes Emanuel Wilson, 8% owned, puts up 13.4 fantasy points for the people who are handcuffing Josh Jacobs. I would imagine that start percentage right around 0. Up next, AJ Barner, 9% owned. We chased it before, didn't work. Are we buying it again? Little bit. 12.1 fantasy points for Seattle. Our flex, Greg Dortch, who is apparently still in the league, 3% owned, 15.6 fantasy points. Our kicker, Matthew Wright, probably just a randomly generated player from Madden, 1% owned. Apparently he plays for the Texans, and he put up 12 fantasy points. And lastly, our defense, the Miami Dolphins, 6% of owners just don't care about their bench. But they had Miami, and they picked up 9 points. So, our team, with the highest owned player as Bryce Young, and one player at 0, one player at 1, they come up with 141.22 fantasy points. Again, driving home that fantasy football is a cruel, cruel business. Shedeur Sanders didn't really impress people this week in relief for the Cleveland Browns, and that has a lot of people doing a little bit of grave dancing right now. And I am perplexed at the reactions to this young quarterback, and specifically to this performance. So let's break down why I think people are really rushing to judgment here. If you happen to miss it, Shedeur Sanders, a bit of a stumble this week in his debut for the Cleveland Browns. And obviously, this is not your regular backup or third string quarterback. This is someone who brings a lot of name value, given who he was as a college football quarterback and who his dad was and is. So there's a lot that goes into this equation. But the people who are coming out this week being like, oh yeah, see, told you, I would like to go on record and say this proved nothing to me. Absolutely nothing to me whatsoever. No one ever said he was going to be ready to play and to be a starter in the NFL in year number 1. That was always, honestly, that was always the discussion around this kid. And I think a lot of it got lost in some of the extracurriculars that were going on around the draft process. But I don't understand. I don't understand why we are surprised when the kid who wasn't ever going to be ready to play in year number 1, wasn't drafted to play in year number 1, hasn't prepared to play in year number 1, wasn't good in year number 1. Of course he wasn't. He was never going to be. No one, even the people the highest on him as a quarterback prospect would tell you that this kid was going to be ready to be a day one starter. There wasn't a soul out there who was going to tell you, or they were being delusional or lying to you or whatever. Honestly, maybe they were just wrong. But anyone who watched and anyone who knew had a pretty good understanding that this was going to be a project. Now, a project that could deem some good results still, but this was going to be a project. I never looked at Shedeur as a prospect, someone who could come in week one and start for my football team. He was always going to have to redshirt, which was always going to be part of the problem with this kid because the attention was going to outweigh the ability in year one. And what was best for him wasn't necessarily going to be what was great for a lot of the attention that would be brought in. So I thought you needed a solid as heck starting quarterback. You needed a firmly planted head coach in whatever organization that was going to draft him and reputationally in the National Football League anyway. And you were going to need to be able to bring this kid along. And that was why the draft process, initially, why I understood him falling the way that he did. Because when you look at the teams that were at the top of the draft, and it was going to be Cleveland, it was always going to be a little bit tricky to have him be the backup quarterback with Joe Flacco as the starter. And Kevin Stefanski, quite frankly, coaching for his job because there was going to be a lot of calls to bring this kid in and everything like that. And he's just not ready. We saw that abundantly clear, but he was never going to be. He's not getting the starter reps in practice, nor should he. And development of a quarterback, it's a bigger issue in the NFL, but it's a little wonky at times for the backups. So what happened on Sunday, shouldn't change anyone's mind. It shouldn't surprise anyone. It definitely should not change the mind of anyone who was following this kid and who was getting ready for this draft process at all. I don't get the well, I do, because of everything that came with that draft and the attention that this kid's people brought onto him and everything around who he is and who his dad is. So I understand the celebrating today, but if you're using Sunday to justify anything, I think you are really missing the bigger picture, and you're probably doing it on purpose. Am I wrong? Like, I am sure, me saying no one thought this kid was going to be a day one starter, a day one starter. I am sure that there were people who were out there saying this guy can turn franchises around right away. So maybe I am overstating some of that part of it anyway. But where am I wrong? Where are the lies in what I said? Let me know in the comment section there. Would love to debate this with you guys, as this is obviously a hot button issue in the National Football League. And hey, if you like this, check out the podcast wherever you get your pods. Just search Couch Potato Diary on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartMusic, all those places. Just search out Couch Potato Diary and bring me with you wherever you go. Let's move now to the world of baseball. The free agent period in baseball is off to a crawling start, but one of the big names is off the board, and he is staying out on the West Coast as Josh Naylor inks a deal with the Mariners that makes so much sense. So, let's discuss. Josh Naylor is sticking with the Seattle Mariners as he signs a 5-year contract worth a little bit more than $90 million, maybe a little bit more than you'd want to pay him, but I think it makes all the sense in the world. You look at the transformation that this offense made with him and Suarez being brought in separate moves at or around the trade deadline for Seattle, and you look at how this team is built with high-level pitching, despite what the Blue Jays did to it in 4 of those 7 games. With high-level pitching, and with him now, Arozarena and Rodriguez at the top half of that lineup, it's a very good baseball team. And Naylor, with the power that he can provide, with the approach that he has up at the plate, and just a bit of a calming influence up there as well. I can tell you, from a Blue Jays fan standpoint, watching him play and watching the Jays take them on in a 7-game American League Championship Series, wasn't really stoked to see that dude. Also, I'm realizing now I forgot to say Kyle Raleigh in the middle of that lineup. Apologies. Obviously, that's the biggest threat there. But it is a support, right? And that is what he provides. So yes, like obviously, as a Blue Jays fan, wasn't stoked to have to pitch to Kyle Raleigh. After that, Naylor was kind of the one that scared you the most, right? So that was, I think, a very smart signing for Seattle, and it really does show that they recognize what they have right now. I think this is a championship team. I really do. There's still a full off season to go, and there is still some work to be done. They obviously didn't have enough bullpen arms that they trusted at the back part, specifically of Game 7 of the American League Championship Series there against Toronto. Maybe you could round out the back of that lineup a little bit more and a couple innings eaters pitching-wise, but it's tweaks now, right? They don't need to go get Kyle Tucker to try to make themselves a contender or anything like that. This is a very, very good ball club and a really dangerous one. And when you look at the Astros having to figure it out again, the Angels perpetually being them, the A's and the Rangers, this feels like one of the dominant teams in their division at this particular time. And I think this signing really does kind of solidify a couple of those things. So very, very strong work here for the Seattle Mariners in getting the first real domino to fall here in free agency. I will say, just, I'm a Blue Jay fan. I don't hide it. I guess I'm not wearing anything right now. You can kind of see the cap back there. Maybe not really. Either way, Blue Jay fan here. So I've always wanted this guy on my team. There's no fit for it. The Blue Jays already have a pretty good first baseman and 2 DH types. They already are figuring out what to do with a designated hitter, so you don't need another one coming in. So it wasn't going to fit for him with Toronto, but boy, I wish that they had that bat in the lineup. I love watching this dude play the sport. So congrats Mariners fans who get to enjoy him now for the next 5 seasons. But what else? Mariners fans, anyone disagree? Like, is there oh no, they shouldn't have done this move? This one felt like an easy one to me. But if you have any disagreement, let me know down in the comments. And what's the next big contract to fall? Let me know down in the comments. A lot changes with Couch Potato Diary on a daily, hourly basis. So keep in touch with me and the show by following me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein on Instagram, X, TikTok, Threads, and on Blue Sky. Keep saying it, but want to post a lot of stuff out there from the show and some updates and everything there. So really trying to round out the social media game, so there's going to be more stuff to come on that in the weeks, months, years ahead. So make sure you give me a follow there on, again, all the social media platforms. I am at Primetime Klein. That's going to do it for the show today. Again, live stream coming up on Wednesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. We are going to be talking, again, more fantasy football. We got a ton of fight stuff that we got to get to this week. With UFC happening last week, there's another UFC fight card and a boxing, pretty big one, Riyadh season happening this weekend. We're going to get to that. AEW has their pay-per-view this weekend. John Cena was on Raw. We have tons of stuff that we need to get to, previewing the fantasy football thing, not just the fantasy football week, but the MLB off season. I haven't gloated about the Riders yet. So much to talk about. So make sure you join me coming up here Wednesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. As always, we are presented by Sea of Dead. Head over to seaofdead403.ca and get all that great Calgary swag. And head over to swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime to get 25% off. Fuel your next gaming session with some great flavors over at Swift Energy. Thank you all so much for hanging out today. If you are listening, hit that subscribe button and leave a review. Always helps me out. If you are watching this after the fact on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and hit the bell bar button there to make sure you know when we are going live and when videos come out for Couch Potato Diary. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Have a great rest of your day, and I will actually get to talk to you all tomorrow.